You know, when I was married for 13 years, I spent 13 years protecting my home. I spent 13 years making sure that there was no threats to my home, that I was the first line of defense. You know, my daughters in my house, they sleep upstairs and I sleep downstairs because to me, I'm the first line of defense if anything goes wrong in the house. And even with their mama that I was married to, I would have taken if anybody was shooting at her, I would have taken every bullet for her and put my life on the line for this woman, right? That's how faithful and dedicated I was to that relationship. Trying to cover your home and to keep your home away from the enemy, which a lot of people might call the devil, and the enemy can be people. You know, I tried my best to keep my home. I prayed over my home, prayed over my kids, prayed over my wife, and I tried my best to keep everybody safe away from the enemy. But here's the thing. I was sleeping right next to the enemy. I didn't even know for 13 years, this woman that I thought loved me, this woman that laid right next to me, this woman that had 4 kids with me, she was the enemy. She was the one that was going out doing all of this dirt behind my back, bringing all of these demonic spirits up in the house. And I was wondering for years what was going on in the house. I'm trying to protect my home, protect my children, protect my wife, and my wife herself was the enemy. For 13 years, I lay and looked next to this woman, and I thought this woman cared for me, man. I thought she did, and I would have, like I said, put my life on the line for her. But she turned out to be the most dirtiest, diabolical, covert narcissist that you could ever think of in your religious covert narcissist, right? So y'all be careful, because a lot of y'all men, a lot of y'all women, you spend your time trying to protect your family, trying to protect your home, but what happens is you end up, and a lot of us know it, a lot of us don't know it, but you end up sleeping with the enemy.
Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all honor, praises, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rekakadash, and double honors and respect to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone for teaching me this truth, as well as much respect and honors to the brothers that are pushing this truth in sincerity across the 4 winds of this earth and risking their lives and freedom to do so. I would also like to give much honors and respect to the brothers and sisters that are of the hopeful elect, that are doing their very best to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High to the best of their abilities. Shalom. As you heard in this short TikTok video that I just shared with you, you had this Jake right here, and he was saying that he was married for 13 years. And he was basically saying while he was married for 13 years, his wife had pretty much become his enemy. He was basically saying that he was sleeping with the enemy. Okay, he was saying that his wife, was bringing in a bunch of, just evil spirits and whatnot. And he had also mentioned something else too that actually stood out, that caught my attention. He had said something about, his wife, was pretty much hiding behind religion. But, the entire time, she was basically being, the enemy. She was being wicked. Okay. And see, this is, an example of why we need the kingdom. Okay. Because here it is, the majority of our women over here on this side, they're wicked as hell, and I'm not doing this lesson to bash all of our women, but, because we have some women that have come back and they're trying to do right, but you have to stand on the truth and call it like it is. The majority of our women are through over here. The majority of our women over here in Babylon the Great, especially, they're wicked as hell. And this is why the majority of our women over here in Babylon the Great are going to be destroyed, because of the wickedness that they're partaking in. Now, see, here it is. You got this devil Esau, who's currently in the power seat. And Esau, he allows any and everything to go on over here. And Esau pushes out all types of philosophies and agendas that are contrary to the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. And what's so sad about it is a lot of our women have taken on those different enchantments and philosophies that's pushed out over here in Babylon the Great. Okay. Also, too, religion. Okay. Here it is. This Jake, he had mentioned again about, his wife was pretty much hiding behind religion. Okay. Esau, he pushes out all these different philosophies, as I was saying, such as religion and whatnot. And you got a lot of our people, they're into these different religions and whatnot. They're into worshiping, white man Jesus and whatnot. Okay. A lot of our women, they hide behind religion, but, here it is. In reality, they're being demons, And it's not just our women that are out of order. The men are out of order, too. But, the focus of this lesson is on the women, because that's what this Jake was talking about. He said that he was married to a narcissist. He said that, his woman, or his former wife, ex-wife was basically his enemy. He was sleeping with the enemy. And I know a lot of brothers, that have experienced this or that, have gone through this. And again, it just shows you that we need deliverance because, again, everything over here, is out of order. Everything has been turned upside down over here. And that's because you got the wicked that's bearing rule. And again, that wicked is Esau Edom. And this devil, he allows any and everything to go on over here. This devil, he allows the woman to rule over the man. Okay, here it is. This devil, he puts all types of legislatures and laws into place to where, if a woman, if she gets, tired of the man or if she gets bored with the man, she can divorce that man at any given moment. Okay, and she can pretty much take that man to the cleaners. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, when I say taking him to the cleaners, she can pretty much, take that man for everything that he's worked for. Okay. Also, too, Esau, he gives the woman, if she divorces the man, usually, the law works in the woman's favor. And so, the woman, she can, make it to where it's difficult for the man to, see his children and whatnot. Okay. Like I say, this whole place is just, it's just out of order because you got the wicked that's bearing rule. And a lot of our people, a lot of our women, have taken on the enchantments and philosophies that's pushed out over here. You have a lot of our women that are taking on this stock culture and whatnot. Okay. You got a lot of our women, they want to rule over the man. Okay. Also, too, okay, in many cases, when Eve can't get her way with the man, she's quick to want to, call Esau on the man through Esau's police force and have the man put out the home. Okay. Or here it is, Eve, in many cases, when she, tries to get her way, with Jake, she'll try to use the children as leverage to try to, get her way with Jake. She'll try to threaten, to prevent Jake from seeing the children, to try to get her way. Like I say, Esau, he allows these things to go on. And so, this place has to go. Okay. America, also known as Babylon the Great, it has to go because this place is totally out of order, but it's not going to stand for much longer. Okay. This place is literally falling right before our eyes and it's going to fall very soon, Lord willing. And with that being said, those by people who don't want to come up out of this place spiritually and return to the Father and the Son, they're gonna perish over here in Babylon the Great. Okay. And with that being said, the majority of our women over here are going to perish. Okay, because the majority of our women, they have taken on these different enchantments and philosophies that's pushed out over here. And the majority of our women, they don't want to come up out of the ways of America. Okay, the majority of our women are through. And with that being said, only the elect man, lady, and children will have a hedge of protection over them and will be delivered before this place is ultimately destroyed. Okay. But, I saw this, this short TikTok video, and I just thought that I would bring out a quick lesson. And with that being said, men of Israel, you got to be very careful when you're dealing with these women because, the majority of these women over here, they're through. Okay. And you just have to stand on the truth and call it like it is. The majority of our women, they got Satan on them, because again, they have taken on these different enchantments and philosophies that's pushed out over here in America. And again, this is why this place has to go. This is why, we need deliverance. Okay, because in the kingdom, in the new righteous kingdom that's going to be ruled over, by our big brother, our Lord and Savior Yahushua, along with 144,000 elect men of Israel, things will be put back in order. Okay, right now everything is turned upside down because you got the wicked that's bearing rule, and again, that wicked is Esau Edom, the self-proclaimed white man. But in the new righteous kingdom that's soon to come, things will be put back in order. Things will be turned right side up. Our women will be back in order. The men will be back in order. Our children will be back in order in the new righteous kingdom that's soon to come. Okay. And so what I'm going to go ahead on and do is I'm going to bring out a few scriptures and then we will end the lesson. Okay, the first scripture I want to go to is in the book of Revelation, and this is chapter 17, and I want to start in verse 1. And it reads, "And there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters." Okay, and see that great whore that sat upon many waters, that's talking about America, also known as Babylon the Great. Verse 2, it says, "With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication."
Okay, and see that being made drunk with the wine of her fornication, that's talking about the wicked philosophies and the enchantments that's pushed out over here in America. Because America, also known as Babylon the Great, is that main hub that pushes out all the wickedness throughout the entire earth. And you have many of these other nations, they have committed fornication with Babylon the Great. Meaning they have taken on the wicked philosophies and enchantments. They have taken on the American way of life. Okay, they have taken on these wicked enchantments and philosophy that Esau pushes out over here in Babylon the Great. And many of these other nations that have taken on these different philosophies and enchantments over here, it actually made these other nations worse off. Okay, because these enchantments and philosophies that are pushed out over here in Babylon the Great, they're contrary to the Most High's law, statutes, and commandments. And see, also, the people over here in Babylon the Great have taken on the wicked enchantments and philosophies, that's pushed out over here. Our women, have taken on these different enchantments and philosophies that are pushed out over here in Babylon the Great, such as feminism. Here it is, you have a lot of our women, they have taken on feminism. Women want to have equal rights to the man, or they want to be above the man. Okay? And see, here it is in many cases, a lot of our women, as a result of taking on the American way of life, they want to rule over the man. Or here it is, a lot of our women, they feel like as though that they're better than the man. Okay? Or they'll say that they don't need a man. Okay? Here it is, many of our women, as a result of taking on these different enchantments that are pushed out over here in America, many of our women, they want to take rides on the cock carousel and whatnot. Many of our women have taken on this stock culture. Here it is, Esau, he pushes out all these different religions and whatnot. A lot of our women, they want to hide behind a lot of these different religions and whatnot, acting like they're holier than thou. But in actuality, they're straight up demons, And see, Esau, he's currently in the power seat. And Esau, he pushes out all these different, enchantments and philosophies that are contrary to the Most High's law, statutes, and commandments. And again, many of our women have taken on these different enchantments and philosophies. And as a result, many of our women have become Jake's enemy. Okay? Because again, you have a lot of our women, they want to try to rule over the man. Okay? A lot of our women, they feel as though they don't need a man. Okay? And in many cases, when Eve can't get away with the man, she's quick to want to try to call Esau, on the Israelite man. To have Esau either through his police system, either through Esau's police force to try to have the man put out of the home. Okay. A lot of our women have become, the Israelite man's enemy as a result of them taking on these different enchantments and philosophies that are pushed out over here. And as and this is why we need the kingdom. This is why we need, deliverance, because everything over here in America is that's pushed out over here. It goes against the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. And so as a result, a lot of our women are out of order. A lot of the men are out of order as well, too. Okay. A lot of our children are out of order. And so this is why we need deliverance. This is why we need the kingdom. Because in the kingdom, everything will be put back in order. Okay, I want to go to the book of Deuteronomy, and this is chapter 28, and this is verse 56. And it reads, "The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter." Okay, and see, this is a curse that many of our women fall under, because many of our women have an evil eye towards Jake. In this video that I shared in the beginning of this lesson, this TikTok video, you heard what the Jake said. He said that his ex-wife had become his enemy. She had become a straight up demon, towards him. Okay. And so, again, this is a curse that many of our women fall under, because, many of our women, they have that evil eye, towards Jake. And as a result, this is why you're having a lot of our women, they want to try to rule over Jake. Okay. Many of our women, they don't want to submit to Jake. Okay. They don't want to play their position as a wife, and submit to the husband. Okay, they want to rule over the man. Okay, here it is. Many of our women, they want to challenge, Jake on every little thing. Okay, here it is. Many of our women, they become, very defensive and rebellious towards Jake. Many of our women, they like to keep a bunch of hell going. And see, and then also, and in many cases, when this is going on, and Jake gets sick and tired of Eve's BS, Jake, he'll eventually leave Eve, and then Eve, she becomes really bitter. Okay, and then what Eve will try to do is she'll try to destroy Jake. Okay, she'll try to destroy Jake financially, by trying to stick Jake on child support. Okay, also too, in many cases when Eve is bitter at Jake, she'll try to make it difficult for Jake to see the children. Okay, in many cases when Eve is bitter at Jake, she'll talk about Jake in front of the children, talk bad about Jake in front of the children, as well as other people, to try to make Jake look like a deadbeat. Many of our women, they do this because they have that evil eye, towards the Israelite man. Let's read this again. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 56 again. It says, "The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter." Okay, and see, here it is. Many of our women, they have an evil eye, towards our seeds as well. Okay, because in many cases, as I had mentioned, Eve, she'll try to prevent, the children from seeing, their dad. Okay, because, she's in her feelings and she's trying to hurt Jake, But in the end, she's not only hurting Jake, okay, she's also hurting those children, trying to keep those children from seeing their dad, especially if that man is trying to do right by those children. And see, in many cases, and see, as I was saying, I mean, because, this hurts the children because, the children, they need a male, role figure, in their lives, But Eve, in many cases, because she's bitter, at the man, she'll try to do these things, to try to hurt, Jake. And even though those children, they may be wanting to see their dad, but Eve, she doesn't care, because she's in her feelings. And see, in many cases, I mean, when, Eve does this, when she tries to prevent, the children from seeing their dad, Eve, for the most part, is left to raise the children. And so in many cases, I mean, when this happens, boys, they become very emotional and whatnot. Okay. And in a lot of cases, boys, they grow up and they become, effeminate. Okay. This is why you're having a lot of these, these YNs out here. Okay. Because, a lot of these YNs that are out here, they're being raised, okay, by, single mothers, But, again, in many cases, okay, when Eve tries to prevent, the children from seeing their dad, you have boys, they become very emotional, okay? Boys, in a lot of cases, they grew up and they become effeminate, okay? A lot of them, they grew up and they turn to the Mo agenda, or here it is, they'll end up, turning to some type of mischievous behavior, some type of other mischievous behavior that will end them up either in prison or 6 feet under. Here it is in many cases, when Eve is left to raise the children, little girls, they grow up and they become thoughts, okay? They become, baby mamas to multiple men, Also too, okay, you'll have even little girls when they're left, to be raised, by their mothers, and there's no male role figure in their life. Little girls, in many cases, they turn to the Mo agenda as well. Here it is yesterday. I went to pick my oldest son up for from his soccer game. And I saw a girl there. She was probably no more than maybe 12 years old or so. But this little girl, she was dressed like a stud. Okay? And see, more than likely, that little girl that was dressed like a stud, there's no man or no real man in the picture. Because a real man, he's not going to allow that to go on. He's not going to allow his little girl to walk around looking like a stud. A real man, perfectly a man of the Lord, he's going to be putting a stop to that. He's not going to allow that to go on. Okay, let's get this last part again. It says, I'm still in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 56. It says, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter. Also, too, Eve, she'll have that evil eye towards, our sons and daughters, because here it is in many cases, what Eve will do is she'll run down to Planned Parenthood, okay, and delete those seeds because she don't want to take on the responsibilities, of being a mother. So she'll end up running down there to Planned Parenthood and offering those seeds. You know, that's, that evil eye, that Eve, has, that a lot of our women have towards, our sons and daughters. And again, this is why we need deliverance. This is why we need the kingdom, because again, in the kingdom, everything would be put back in order. Our men would be back in order. The women would be back in order. Our children would be back in order. Okay. Okay, this is the book of Ecclesiasticus, and this is chapter 42, and this is verse 13. And it reads, "For from garments cometh a moth, and from women wickedness." Okay? And see, here it is. Many of our women over here in Babylon the Great, they're through. They're wicked as hell. Because again, they have taken on these different enchantments and philosophies that are pushed out over here. As I had mentioned earlier, many of our women, they want to rule over the man. And when they can't get their way with the man, they want to raise a bunch of hell, okay? They want to keep a bunch of hell going. They always want to challenge Jake on every little matter, They don't want to submit. They want to be they want to rule over, okay? And when they can't get their way, they want to try to call Esau through Esau's police force, on Jake, to try to have Jake either removed from the home or to have Esau to go upside Jake's head with a billy club and to try to cause harm to Jake. That's wickedness coming from a woman, okay? And this happens, quite often amongst our people. And see, and this is the reason why, you're having a lot of Jakes that are no longer wanting to deal with, Eve, okay? Mainly the American black woman, okay? Because, and you have to stand on the truth. The so-called black woman, especially over here in Babylon the Great, the majority of them are straight up demons. They don't want to get in order. A lot of them, they're rude, they're rebellious. A lot of them have taken on masculine energy. They're not, feminine, And then, back to this Jake in the TikTok video that I shared in the beginning of this lesson, he was saying that, that his ex-wife, was hiding behind religion. But in reality, she was being a demon, she was being his enemy. She was giving him hell. And see, and this is why, a lot of Eves, mainly the so-called black woman over here in Babylon the Great, they're finding themselves alone, okay, by themselves. Because, the majority of them are wicked as hell. Instead of being a pillar of rest, the majority of them have, become thorns in your side. And seeing with that being said, real men, they want peace. Real men, they want peace. They don't want a bunch of lip. They don't want a bunch of back talking, a bunch of attitude, a bunch of drama. Real men don't want that. Okay? But, this is what you're going to get, when, dealing with the majority of our women over here in Babylon the Great. And, again, I'm not, doing this lesson to, bash all of our women, because we have some of our women, they have come back and they're, and they're trying to do right, But again, the majority of our women over here in Babylon the Great, they're through. They're through. Because they have taken on these different enchantments and philosophies that are pushed out over here. And they have become, the majority of them have become the Israelite man's enemy. Okay, I want to stay in the book of Ecclesiasticus, but I want to go to chapter 25, and this is verse 13. And it reads, "Give me any plague, but the plague of the heart, and any wickedness, but the wickedness of a woman." Okay, and see, a plague of the heart, that means a plague of the mind. Okay, and see, a plague of the mind, can have you all bugged out. It can have you hearing all types of voices and things and whatnot. A plague of the mind can, have you in a mental institution. Let's read this again. This is Ecclesiasticus chapter 25, verse 13 again. It says, "Give me any plague but the plague of the heart, and any wickedness but the wickedness of a woman." Okay, and see, a wicked woman, can drive you crazy. A wicked woman, she can make you feel, always tired and always, ill. A wicked woman can keep you miserable. If you're not careful, a wicked woman, she can even get you locked up. Okay. A wicked woman, if you're not careful, she can even, send you to an early grave. Here it is. There's men in prison right now. all, behind a wicked woman, all behind a wicked woman. There's men in the grave right now, all behind a wicked woman, And so, with that being said, men of Israel, this is why you have to be very careful, okay, when you're dealing with these women, And, not just our women, these women over here in Babylon the Great, the majority of them are through, okay? But, again, men of Israel, this is why you have to fear the Lord too, okay? This is why you have to repent if you haven't already done so. Because, the Most High can pair you up with a wicked woman. And that woman, she can make your life a living hell. Okay, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 25, and this is, I want to drop down to verse 16. And it reads, I had rather dwell with a lion and a dragon than to keep house with a wicked woman. Okay, and see, a lion and a dragon, those are two, animals that can, really do some serious damage to you. A lion and a dragon can send you back to the spirit world. So in, other words, it's better to die, than to keep house with a wicked woman. Because, a wicked woman can drive you mad. As I was saying, a wicked woman, in many cases, she can send you to, prison, or she can send you to an early grave. A wicked woman, she can compromise your health. Ecclesiastes chapter 25, verse 17. Okay, it says, the wickedness of a woman changeth her face and darkeneth her countenance like sackcloth. Okay, and see, and here it is, and in many cases, you can see the wickedness on our women. In many cases, you don't even have to talk to, our women. You can just literally see the wickedness on them, through their countenance. You can see, the wickedness, through how they carry themselves, Here it is. You can see the wickedness in our women by, how, many of them dress. Because here it is, many of our women, they like to wear very little to no clothing at all. They like to try to show off their shapes and body parts, leaving nothing to their imagination. Here it is, a lot of our women, they like to take to social media, all half dressed and whatnot. They like to get on social media twerking and shaking and whatnot, that's wickedness coming from a woman, okay? Here it is in public, many of our women, they're clamorous or they're very loud, In many cases, a lot of our women are full of attitude. They have an aggressive countenance about themselves. You can see it in their face. And so, as a result, it makes you not even want to approach them. Verse 18, it says, her husband shall sit among his neighbors, and when he heareth it, shall sigh bitterly. Okay, and see, he's sighing bitterly because that woman, is working his nerves with her wickedness. Verse 19, it says, all wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman. Let the portion of a sinner fall upon her. Okay, and again, men of Israel, this is why we stress repentance. This is why you have to fear the Lord. Okay, because again, those who don't fear the Lord, if you're not out here, if you're out here being wicked and whatnot, the Most High can pair you up with a wicked woman, and that woman can make your life a living nightmare. Okay? That woman, she can make your life a living nightmare. She can even make your children's life a living nightmare. Okay, I want to stay in Ecclesiastes chapter 25, but I want to drop down to verse 23. And it reads, a wicked woman abateth the courage, maketh an heavy countenance, and a wounded heart. A woman that would not comfort her husband in distress, maketh weak hands and feeble knees. Okay, and this is right. Okay, this is also right. A wicked woman, if you're not strong, a wicked woman can break you down physically and mentally, and if you're not careful, a wicked woman, she can compromise your health. Again, a wicked woman, she can send you to an early grave. Okay, this is going to be my last scripture, and then we're going to end the lesson. And this is Micah, and this is chapter 7, and this is verse 10. And it reads, then she, that is my enemy, shall see it, and shame shall cover her which said unto me, where is the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, thy power? My eyes shall behold her. Now shall she be trodden down as the mire of the streets. Okay, and again, as I was saying, the majority of our women, over here in Babylon the Great have become our enemies, okay? Because the majority of our women have taken on the American way of life. The majority of our women have taken on these different enchantments and philosophies that's pushed out over here. The majority of our women, they want to rule over Jake. Okay, the majority of our women, they don't want to submit. Okay, they want to challenge Jake on every little thing. Okay, basically they want to keep a lot of hell going. Okay, especially when they can't get their way. And as I had mentioned, in many cases when Eve can't get her way, she'll either try to call police on Jake, to try to get, Jake removed from the home, or she'll try to call, the police to try to cause harm to Jake, to try to get Jake unalive. I had saw a video a while back to where you had a bunch of wicked Eves, and they was talking about, that they get a thrill, okay, out of seeing Jake get hurt, okay, by, these police out here, and that is just wicked as hell, okay? That is wicked as hell. And see, here it is. Also, as I had mentioned, many of our women, they try to hurt, Jake by trying to keep Jake from seeing his children, when they're bitter at Jake. And then also, too, here it is. Many of our women, when they're in the wrong, they don't want to accept any type of accountability. Instead of, accepting, accountability, what many of our women will try to do is they will try to pass the blame on Jake, to try to make it seem as though that, that it's all Jake's fault. Here it is in many cases, a lot of our women, they feel like, like they're never in the wrong. Okay. Okay. Let's read this again. This is Micah chapter 7. This is verse 10 again. It says, then she that is my enemy shall see it, and shame shall cover her which said unto me, where is the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahweh power? My eyes shall behold her. Now shall she be trodden down as the mire of the streets. Okay, and as this Jake in the TikTok video was saying, he was saying that his ex-wife, she hid behind religion, acting as though that she was holier than thou, but in reality she was a straight up demon, and she was basically his enemy. And see, a lot of our women, they do this. They'll hide behind religion, acting like they're holier than thou, but in actuality they're straight up demons. Okay, and in reality they don't fear the Lord. Those type of women that are doing these things, they don't fear the Lord, because if they did fear the Lord, they would humble down and get in order. And see, here it is right now. We're living in some evil times right now. And with that being said, more evils are coming, because this place, America, is circling the toilet. America is a sinking ship. This place is not going to recover, And see, here it is. With that being said, a lot of these women that have wronged, these men, a lot of these women that have, used this system that Esau has set up to try to destroy, these men. A lot of these men, they're going to be, wanting to take vengeance out on these women very soon, because here it is. Jacob's trouble is here. And you already having hell is beginning to break loose over here. And very soon, all hell is going to be breaking loose over here. Okay? Society is going to break down. Okay? The economy is going to collapse. And a lot of these men that have been wronged, by these women out here, they're going to be seeking revenge. Let's read this again. This is Micah chapter 7, verse 10 again. It says, then she that is my enemy shall see it, and shame shall cover her which said unto me, where is the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahweh thy power? My eyes shall behold her. Now shall she be trodden down as the mire of the streets. And again, men of our women, they don't believe in the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahweh, but very soon they will, but it's going to be too late for a lot of them. Because a lot of them, they're going to be trodden down. A lot of these women, the majority of our women over here in Babylon the Great, they're going to fall over here. They're going to perish over here in Babylon the Great. Only the elect man, lady, and child will have that hedge of protection over them and will be delivered before this place is ultimately destroyed. The majority of our women over here in Babylon the Great, they're going to be in a bad case. They're going to fall over here. And see, here it is. A lot of these women that have taken on these different enchantments, such as this, Miss Independent, this Miss I don't need a man and whatnot. A lot of them are starting to have a change of heart now, because again, this place is waxing worse and worse. This place is literally falling right before our eyes. You got inflation that's on the rise over here. Okay, you got the workers drying up over here, and a lot of these women, they're getting caught up into these calamities, okay? Here it is. I saw a video the other day to where you had this older Jake, he was homeless. And he was saying, that he was sleeping out on the strip, on a sidewalk. And he was saying that sidewalk that he was sleeping on, there were a lot of Eves, okay, that were also out there on that sidewalk sleeping because they're homeless. And a lot of those Eves, they had children with them, And so, this place is just going to continue to wax worse and worse. It's not going to get any better, And again, a lot of these women, a lot of these Eves out here, who don't believe, they're going to believe in the day of the Lord, but it's going to be too late. Shame is going to cover these wicked Eves, and, they're going to fall over here. They're going to be left out here to face the evils and the calamities, and they're going to perish in the day of the Lord. Again, only the elect man, lady, and child will have that hedge of protection over them and will be delivered out of Babylon the Great before this place is ultimately destroyed. And so, that's pretty much the point. I'm going to go ahead and end off here. I hope it was edifying. Once again, I want to give all honor, praises, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, and double honors and respect to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, Kwame Yasharal and Abal Babal. Shalom.